Hi! So, welcome to an unplanned video. Well, I guess it was a planned video. I didn't know it was going to happen today. I thought it was going to happen more next week, but I had just finished shooting this video. Well, you don't recognize it, but this is still my same computer, same pieces and parts, but I got a new case and I did my first hardline water cooling build and it actually turned out halfway decent. I didn't break anything, so that's always a plus. And I was getting ready to edit that video so I could get it uploaded for you guys. And then a surprise cake. So I had ordered some filament, just some PLA, some transparent and some blue, just to up my stocks, give me some more colors and things to work with and prints. And when I opened the door, there was another box that I had not expected. Oh yes! That box was a new 3D printer. So you probably remember that I ordered a Prusa Mark III's. It's not here yet. It's supposed to be here by the end of the month, so they say. But the other day, Flsun reached out to me and said, hey, we got this new Delta printer. It's supposed to be good for beginners. Would you like to take a look? And I was like, yes, I would. On this channel, I do a lot of 3D printing stuff, and the more printers I got, the better. And long story short, I guess, but back when I was originally thinking about getting a printer before I bought what I did, one of you guys reached out and was giving me some tips and pointers on what I should get for our first printer. I ended up getting the Tevo Tarantula Pro, and it has worked good. I've had my issues with it. Most of them have been caused by me, but some by the printer, but it is currently printing great and has been a good experience nonetheless. But I always thought Deltas look sweet, and I remember talking to the guy that was giving me the tips back in the day. He's like, Deltas are cool, but they're not really made for beginners. They're hard to tune. If something goes wrong, you're gonna really just have a real bad time. I think it's better if you would get like a Cartesian printer for your first one. And I was like, okay, so that's what I did. But Deltas have always been something I look at because they're just so cool looking. But this is what it is. So this is supposed to be a Delta that's easy for beginners. It's supposed to be easy to put together, full of features that you would want as a first-time 3D printing person. And it's supposed to have good prints right out of the box. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to unbox this, see how it's all packaged up, see what you get, try to put it together with literally nothing but what comes in the box, see if it's easy or not, and then do some first prints. And then after that, I think I'll go grab the Tevo, bring it in here, and we'll have like a little drag race because Deltas are supposed to be faster. So I hear. I've never owned one, but everybody says, you know, less mass, moving around on the end effector, quicker speeds. Maybe not print speeds because you're still kind of limited by your extruder, but in your rapids and your movements, you should be able to get higher speeds. So we're gonna maybe do a drag race benchy to benchy between the Q5 Delta and the Tevo Tarantula Pro. So let's get into this bad boy and see what you got, because I'm pretty excited because I do like me some 3D printing. I haven't done an unboxing in quite a while, but I knew you guys would want to see the new printer added to the channel, and I was too excited not to show you. Am I opening this upside down? Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? 1 second, please. I guess there is an arrow that says this way up, but I ignore arrows and just kind of do stuff with a knife. So we're already off to a better start than the Tevo. The Tevo was, I mean, there's a channel. I'll leave a link if you have a Tevo. There's a channel out there that did a really good job making a video about how to put it together. And without them, I probably would have been very frustrated. But this has far less parts. So we got a power cord. We got our legs for our sick Delta. Also, Deltas are even better for time-lapsing because the bed doesn't move, so maybe we'll get to do some better time-lapse situations on our project. USB cord. I think this is a spool holder. It looks like our arms. That's quite obvious what that is. I mean, it's good. It's well packaged. We'll give them that. Packaging, A+. Looks to be no, that's our hot end. So this printer, I believe, is $275. It is a printer from China. So I assume there are going to be some clones on it, but let's curb our expectations here because you get what you get for $275, and as long as it prints well and it's easy to work with, I don't think we have any room to complain. There's our build plate. And a little bit of filament that we can maybe use. So we got a build plate. We have a lid. So I have done a little bit of research on this. So the best thing about this printer is it's supposed to be easy, obviously. It's got a touch screen and a 32-bit controller, so it should look updated compared to, you know, things like the Tevo or little 8-bit microcontrollers on most of these. It does have automatic bed leveling, which I've heard is a big plus for a Delta, like a needed. You must have automatic bed leveling for a Delta or you're really gonna have a bad time. This looks like, it looks like a E3D V6, but I can see 2 set screws in there, so it's obviously not a full metal hot end, which might be a good thing, might not be a bad thing. I do have a bunch of those nozzles, so that's a benefit. I guess we'll just see how it works. First things first, we'll get her put together. So that experience was very, very positive. So everything was, I think I built that whole thing in like 45 minutes, 30 minutes probably. I don't even know, it didn't take long at all. Everything uses the same size screw, which is awesome. I literally used nothing. I used the Allen key they gave me and that was it. Everything uses the same size screws, so it's pretty straightforward. The flash card has instructions on it, so you just use that. That's pretty simple. Even these little arms, see, the arms are already they're already preset to the length. They look like they've been epoxied in place, so there should be no issue with the length of those ever changing. And even the screws are pre-installed. They're already in there, and they all have Loctite already applied to them. So when you screw them in there, they should never back out. So that is just a nice little touch. Everything is pretty solid too. You got extruded aluminum for the legs. Everything else is like steel. I mean, this is a bent steel shell. Everything's inside there. There is a little, on the power supply though, there is like a little dip switch that you need to make sure is set correctly for what region you're in. So it's like either 115 or 220. Obviously in the United States, we need 115. So make sure you check that before you fire it up. But in a nutshell, that was probably the best build experience I've ever had, assembling like anything. The Tevo was a nightmare. I mean, it was, all the parts were there, I guess, but it just took forever. There were so many tiny pieces. This was literally as close as you can get to a full assembled kit, and I was just blown away by how simple that went together. So I guess we'll just power it on now. See how easy it is to level the bed. The cooling fan inside this top part is pretty loud. Actually, it's the cooling fan on the hot end here, or on the effector. It's pretty loud. Let's see here. Preheat, PLA. So let it get up to temperature. Now, the best thing about a Delta printer is that this is the bed leveler. And like my Tevo has a BL Touch, every single time you print it, it touches the bed, make sure to set up a mesh. This should be like a one-time thing. Put it on there, sets a mesh up for this build plate, which should never move. Well, I mean, it doesn't move. It should always be the same. Never got to do it again, and it should just be easy as that. Plus, it doesn't move, so like building tall stuff, you don't have to worry about it falling off or getting kicked off. Also, time lapses look very sweet on a Delta. So we'll do that. There looks like there's some already, like some PLA or something in the build, the hot end was just leaking out. Scoot this up here a little bit. This is probably not a good thing to do, but whatever. It's heating up pretty quick, actually. So this should, just click onto the wiring harness here. And it's magnetic, so let's see right there, I guess. That's pretty straightforward. So we're pretty much up to temp now. That didn't take very long either. Wow, impressive. Tools. Auto level. Auto level. Please plug in the leveling module. Confirm. Hey. Also, the build plate is quite cool. So it's like a glass top, but it's got this textured finish on it. So I used to print on glass on the Tevo, but then for the Tevo specifically, the bed is not the best, like heat-wise. If you got a big, thick piece of glass on there, it tends to be a lot cooler towards the edges than the center. So I got rid of that and got a PEI flexible bed sheet, which is a lot better for that. But glass always gives you that nice, smooth bottom. So this should be pretty good. This is so far so good. I didn't read anything on how to do any of this. This is all just touching the screen and see what it looks like. And so far it's pretty simple. Evidently there is instructions, and it doesn't want you to heat the nozzle. Probably doesn't matter. Essentially, we probably don't want to damage the mechanical switch and plastic housing. So keep that in mind. So then this is done, we're going to remove the leveling switch and then run the move home command from the touch screen. And then we'll use a piece of paper to adjust the distance between the nozzle and the bed. Pretty standard stuff, and then it should be good to go. It's all done. So now we'll take this off. All right, and I'm not going to re-level it. If we have issues building, then I'll do another leveling, but it should be all right. So now we're going to hit move home. Please remove the leveling switch. Check. All done. Confirm. Having a hard time clicking the buttons because I got all these lights give me a nice big glare. Now it's going to go down to where its home is. We're going to go adjust Z, and I guess the plan here is we go up and down. That's it. So that's 0.05. Then we can hit up or down, I assume. So piece of paper. Well, we're just starting to bite there. Can only go in 0.05 or 0.1 increments. That's too tight. So we're gonna have to go there. Okay, and then we'll hit save. And then I think that's it. So I got some filament here. This is from Mitsubishi Chemical, MCPP. This is their pink, like their satin pink. It's pretty awesome. I guess we'll just print whatever on the memory card. There's, I guess, pre-installed or pre-loaded test prints. Specifically a screw with some threads that I want to see. We'll see how good it prints. Right out of the box, nothing done. Okay, looks like we're up to temp. It does ship with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, in case you are curious. So we'll let it print and see how it turns out. There it is, first print. So that took about 2 hours. That's the bolt and nut that comes already preloaded on the flash drive, and I will say that I'm pretty impressed. The quality of this is great, especially when you look at the knurl that's on both of these. It's flawless. I don't see any gaps on the surface or the edges. It just did a really good job for a printer that's in this price point. Straight out of the box. Stuck to the build plate very well. It's still stuck actually. Oh, there's one. Let's see if I can get this one out without breaking it. There we go, 2. So build plate adhesion is very impressive, to say the least. Now the question is, will this screw on here? Wow. That's pretty good. So threads on there, no problem. I mean, that's actually quite good. Quite impressed with everything so far. But you know, I mean, this is a preloaded print, so I'm pretty sure that the guys over at Flsun spent some time making sure that this G code was tuned for the Q5 and that it was going to print well every single time, straight out of the box. The question is, can I slice something up that prints just as good? So I think we'll do the old classic benchy. We'll move this over into the other room where I have the Tevo set up. I'll slice up a benchy for this one and that guy, Same settings, you know, same speeds, you know, the standard benchy test. We'll run them both at the same time, and we'll see if they finish about the same time. Yeah, they'll be running the same speeds and rapids, but the inertia on this printer is far less than, you know, the build plate of the Tevo, so it might finish sooner. We'll have to wait and see, you know. But it'll be interesting to see if I can replicate these results with my own slice of the 3D Benchy. So, be right back. So it's been a few days. It's been a couple days of me just playing around with it. I wanted to make sure I had a good feel for the printer before I came on here and gave you my thoughts on the experience. But the whole idea behind the Flsun Q5 is to be a Delta printer that's friendly to beginners. And I'm pretty new at 3D printing myself, let's be honest. I have some rough prints. You guys have probably seen them. And when I was considering getting a 3D printer, getting into 3D printing, I really wanted a Delta. I love how Deltas look when they're going around. It looks like just witchcraft. I personally, a lot of people say they take up too much space, but I would rather have a printer that's tall than something that's splayed out, you know, across your desk, taking up a lot of space, sliding back and forth. So I liked them, but everybody says, don't get a Delta if it's your first printer. You're going to have a bad time. So I didn't. I got the Tevo, and the Tevo's been doing good. I had some teething issues with it. But, you know, it's to the point now that it does make reliable prints. I have far fewer problems with it. But the Flsun, does it deliver on being beginner friendly? And I would say, as a beginner, yeah, it does. For instance, the packaging was top notch. There's no chance I would think of anything, especially considering it's literally made of metal, anything to get damaged. Putting it together, the assembly process was probably as close as you can get to a fully built model. I mean, from unpackaging to fully assembled and printing the test print that it came with was like 30 minutes. And that is insane considering how long it took me to do the Tevo. Yeah, I was a bit newer then, but there was a lot more pieces and parts. The whole thing had to be put together, where this is just kind of snapping on some sub-assemblies. And I just think it's clean looking. Everything's in a nice packaged location. You know, the power supply, the main board, it's all up top. The touchscreen, big fan, a 32-bit touchscreen when compared to using an 8-bit wheel. You don't really know how good that is until you've used one, so I really like that. The build surface is really good. So the biggest issue I've had with the Tevo since I got it was prints falling off or peeling up or doing whatnot. And I've got to the point where it's better because I got a PEI flexible build sheet, and it does good as long as I keep it nice and clean. But I have occasionally have things lift where I don't want them. But this thing, this glass build surface with this texture on top, wow. It's almost to the point that after it's done printing, you almost can't remove the print until you let the thing cool down, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. I do like the removable sheet because I can break it off and get back to going, but I would much rather have that bit of annoyance than the annoyance of trying to print something only to look down and see the corners folding up or come into the room and just have it laying on the floor. So that is probably the best part. It heats up very quick. I've timed the two, the Tevo and this one, and both of the build beds getting up to 70 degrees. This one is far faster. I mean, that's not really a big deal because I always preheat before I print stuff, but it's just nice. The stepper drivers, you can see it's running. They're quiet. The loudest one being the extruder, but I believe it uses a different driver than the other axes. But that was another big complaint of the Tevo, is the Tevo is really loud. The drivers are pretty cheap. They make a lot of noise, but these have legitimate good drivers, or so they appear to be. They're very quiet, and I much appreciate that. But I mean, all the things I love about this, the witchcraft of a Delta printer, the nice solid steel construction, the 32-bit color touchscreen, the literal like magnet of a, I guess it's not a magnet, but the adhesion that this build plate generates. There's a few things I don't like. First one being this guy. So this is the stock duct, the cooling duct that comes on this printer. It's bent steel, so that's cool. I mean, it is very sturdy, but problem is, being that it's a bent steel construction, that kind of limits the design of, or limits the scope on how you can design stuff and want it to be manufacturable. And because of the way that it's shaped, it just doesn't do a good job. So the first thing I printed, of course, after getting this up and sliced, was a 3D Benchy. So this is the Benchy I chose. The green one is the Tevo, because I have the Tevo dialed in a little bit better since I've been using it for quite a while. And I just wanted to compare the two, and you can see that it's okay for a first print, but if you look at the front of it, there's obvious cooling issues where the filament is just not cooling quick enough and it's just drooping and looking all nasty. But given that it's a 3D printer and you can make your own parts, did a quick search on Thingiverse, found somebody that already made a duct for it, printed it out, put it on there, And it worked, but it was a little too low for me. It was so close to the build plate, and then I actually had an issue where it did catch on one of my prints. So I took that design and I tweaked it. I shortened it up a little bit and I pushed it a little closer to the nozzle, and I printed that out and then printed another benchy. As you can see, it is much, much better. It's almost exactly the same as the Tevo. So, I mean, the Tevo is not the world's best printer, and I'm not the world's best slicer and printer, but it looks decent. It's workable for me. And it does now everything I need it to do, and that being cool the part and print it out. So I was very, very pleased with that. And then I did some test cubes. So I did, of course, the green again was done on the Tevo just to kind of see where it's at. And then I did a pink one, and basically I did the same two at the same speed settings just to see if the delta was any faster. And given that they're set at the same speed, really didn't think it was going to be, and it pretty much wasn't. They finished pretty closely to the same time. The delta did finish ahead, but that's because the Tevo has to go through a bed leveling sequence before it even gets going. It does heat up slower because I started them both from like pretty much cold, and so this one did finish faster, but the whole printing process was pretty much identical given that they are printing at the same speed. Then I decided, well, I'm going to crank up the accelerations and the jerk and everything and see what it does then, see what the print looks like, and it finished, and it's dimensionally okay, but you can see that there is some pretty noticeable ghosting on especially like the x-axis. And then I did print a third cube where I kind of tweaked the speeds to be higher than I have gone before on the Tevo, and it finished pretty much within 11 minutes of starting, and had a print that was pretty much similar to the Tevo's at its slower speed and dimensionally accurate. So I was pretty pleased with all of that. So just adding a new cooling fan, little duct cooling fan, little part cooling fan, got me exactly where I wanted to be for prints. Which is kind of a bummer. I mean, you shouldn't have to replace something out of the box, and you could use that, but if you want the best experience, I would definitely recommend printing that out as one of your first things you print. You don't need any support material. It just sticks to the bed and prints out, and then you just simply take the old one off, put that in there. I'll leave a link to the one I made, which is basically a copy of the one I found, and I'll leave a link to that one too. You can decide which one you like the best, or which one you want to use, I guess. They're both pretty good. The other thing I don't really like is this front fan. And this is more just nitpicking than anything. The little fan, the cooling fan that cools the heat sink of the extruder or the hot end, is quite noisy. You can probably, that's the loudest thing in this whole thing. It's louder than the drivers or stepper motors. It's just the loudest thing of everything. It does a good job of cooling, but that whine is something that's a bummer. It's a standard 40 millimeter by 10 thick cooling fan, so it's easily replaceable with like a Noctua A4 by 10, A4X10. I think they are. You're gonna definitely need a step down converter though, because that's 24 volts, and those are only coming 12, which is a bummer. I wish Noctua would make some 24 volt small fans. I wish they'd make a blower fan too. Blower fan, no issue with that. It's actually quieter than the cooling fan. And I actually didn't have any issues. So I was worried about this spool holder, since it doesn't extend all the way through or all the way out to the edge of the spool, that I would have issues with it wanting to walk off, but I haven't. So I guess I won't really replace that until it becomes a problem. It might never. I mean, it does have a lip on it, so it does kind of tilt it. So if it's going to walk, it's going to try to walk back into the spool holder, so it might not even be an issue. I just thought it might be. So one thing I was nervous about was this, the Titan clone extruder. The Tevo had a Titan clone, and I did not have good experience with it. It stripped out filament like a champion, and that was the most frustrating thing about that whole experience. And something that I would buy this machine over that one just to get away from doing that, mess with that thing. Eventually I just gave up. Eventually I did just give up and get a new extruder, and I haven't had any issues since. But in the short time that I've used this, haven't had any problems with this one wanting to strip filament, which is, trust me, a bonus. Now after I ran all the little test cubes and little benchies, I wanted to print something that was like more for just like looks, or just like a little trinket. So I got some of this MCPP. This is like the metallic ocean blue filament, so it's that cool sparkly stuff. And then I went to Thingiverse and I found this little tiny Yoda. And using that nozzle, that 0.6 nozzle for a different type of extruder, but seems to work just fine, I printed this guy out. And because it was a 0.6 nozzle, it printed out really quick. And although it's not perfect, it actually looks quite good given the resolution that it's printed at. The bottom is nice and flat and smooth. All of the support came off really good. And you know, even though it's printed at a pretty high resolution and pretty coarse, it doesn't look that bad. And I'm sure that if you put on like a really tiny nozzle, you would get something really good out of this printer. So that is awesome to see that after all that tweaking and testing, that after I threw a nice little trinket in there, it printed out pretty good, and I really enjoy how it ended up looking. I think I'll keep it, little baby Yoda. So in the end, I mean, I guess you can't really call this a review because I haven't really used it that long, but the claim that Flsun makes of being a beginner-friendly Delta printer, does it hold up to that? I say yes. If it was me, back when I was looking for my first printer and I was looking at Deltas, but then told they're not for you, newbie, and ended up getting the Tevo and I had issues with the Tevo. Knowing what I know now, which one I would have picked? Definitely this one. Unless you need a bigger build volume than 200 millimeters, this experience was far better than what I had with the Tevo. I will say that I learned more because of those issues on the Tevo, but this thing, if you wanted a nice Delta printer that has a pretty solid construction that you get built up and printing in like literal minutes, I mean, you can't go wrong, the Flsun. Now I might run into problems down the line, so we'll have to revisit this printer at a later date to see how it held up through the test of time. But as of now, if you're looking to get a Delta, you're looking to get in through your printing, I don't see an issue. Why not go with this one? I've had a good experience with just little minor inconveniences, but nothing that you'd have to fix. So now that I got this Delta and we can do some awesome time lapses, let's get going on some other projects. So if you want to check out the rest of my 3D printing projects, make sure to check them out down below. Get subscribed if you're interested in just doing wackadoo stuff just for the sake of fun. And thanks for watching. Bye.